Yeah,
it's
difficult for people to participate with Teams. It's much it's much easier with Zoom. So, which is why we've gone for Zoom. The first thing I'm going to do is to advise everybody participating that a recording is being made because it's an official council meeting, and it will be put on the council's YouTube website, so you can look at it in the future should you be sad and lonely and have a wish to revisit it. Okay, the first item we've got is the clean air zone update. But before we start, can I just ask people to put all their, can you go on mute so that if you do have somebody come into the room, so if everybody who's other than the participant, Peter, who's going to do the presentation, if you could all go on mute, because it's very difficult otherwise for us to hear what the person who's presenting the report has to say. So welcome everybody, and welcome Peter Edwards from Birmingham City Council, is going to talk about the clean air zone, which came into effect when, Peter?
Good evening everyone. Came into effect on the 1st of June and has been charging since the 14th of June. So 6 weeks, a couple of months, it's been operational. So yeah, so I don't intend to do a formal presentation. I won't put the slides up.
Somebody's imagining this.
I think it's one person just.
Oh, somebody imagining a potato, imagining they're called Trixie.
Can we try and put yourself on mute, please? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Hi, so my name's Peter Edwards. I'm Principal Clean Air Zone Officer in Birmingham City Council's Clean Air Zone team. Here to give you an overview of kind of the Clean Air Zone and what's been going on since we launched. So just in case anybody wasn't aware, the Clean Air Zone is a targeted area looking to improve air quality in Birmingham. So it is a category D clean air zone, which means that it covers all vehicles, which that's buses, taxis, HGVs, light good vehicles, vans and cars as well. So if you do check your vehicle on the government vehicle checker and it tells you that you would be charged here and you wouldn't be charged in Bath, the reason for that is that they're doing a category C and so they're not charging cars, they're only doing the other categories, vans, taxis, etc. So it's not a congestion charge. It's not all vehicles. It's only vehicles that do not meet the relevant compliance standards. That's Euro 6 for diesel, which is about cars from about 2015 onwards, and Euro 6 for petrol. And it's less restrictive for petrol because they're less polluting. So it's around about 2006. But the best thing to do is to input your vehicle registration into the government's vehicle checker, and I can put the link to that in the chat. So the area that is covered is all the roads within the middle ring road, the A4540, but not the ring road itself. So you can drive around the ring road, you can drive around the zone, but the moment that you drive into the zone, if your vehicle is non-compliant, and it's important to point out that before we when we did the modelling back in 2017, 2018 for the consultation, it was around about between 20 and 25% of vehicles. And what we're seeing so far is that it's an even smaller percentage than that of actual vehicles that are impacted. I think it's also important to point out that the A38 and the tunnels that go through taking you to Aston Expressway, they are chargeable. They are part of the clean air zone. There is sometimes a misconception that that road is exempt. That's not the case. So if you're traveling on the A38 going through to the Aston Expressway or vice versa, then those roads are still chargeable. So it's all roads within the clean air zone. There's a variety of exemptions and financial incentives available. They remain open. We haven't closed anything off now that the zone is live. So residents of the zone, people who work in the zone, businesses in the zone, they can apply for temporary exemptions. There are no permanent exemptions. And also there are financial grants available for taxi drivers, HGV operators, and various other people in terms of helping them upgrade their vehicles. All the information's on our website, which is brumbreeds.co.uk. I can put that in the chat as well. But in terms of where we are now, the Clean Air Zone went live on the 1st of June. And at that point, all the cameras were switched on. We started recording data, but a decision was made to not charge people, like an amnesty, a soft launch, whatever you want to call it. So between the 1st of June and the 14th of June, no charges were made. Part of the reason for that is that despite all the efforts we've done, we knew that some people still would not understand and would not necessarily pay the charge. And we learned from Bath, that went live in March, they had a very, very high non-payment rate. So the decision was made to have all that big fanfare on the 1st of June, and we had a massive amount of media coverage. And then to enable people another 2 weeks to get set. And in that 2-week period, I think we approved, for example, another 700 applications for exemptions. So a lot of people who otherwise would have been charged, they saw the media coverage, and they managed to get their exemptions in time. So from the 14th of June onwards, it is now a charging Clean Air Zone. So £8 a day for regular vehicles, £50 for heavy goods vehicles. And we've taken a soft approach to enforcement for the first, where are we? Around 6 months, in that if you don't pay within the 13-day window, so you can pay 6 days in advance on the day or 6 days after your visit. If you don't pay in that window, a penalty charge notice will be issued for £120. That's £60 if paid within 14 days. But as part of our approach to the soft launch, we've been offering people the opportunity to pay the daily fee instead. That's ongoing for the rest of July. And then from August onwards, everything will be as it will be forever. So the soft launch process will be over. So if you don't pay 6 days after your visit, then you will be issued with a penalty charge notice and you'll be expected to pay that. So that's where we are, really. We are about to, I was just saying to the councillor just before everyone joined the call, this call has come perhaps 48 hours too early for us to talk through some of the kind of more detailed stats. So we're about to release, I think Wednesday, Thursday this week, a kind of information pack on the first month of how many vehicles have passed through, how many vehicles have been charged, what's the non-compliance rate, how many people haven't paid and have therefore been issued a PCN, those sorts of stats. So that will be released later this week. That will go out to the press and to councillors, etc., and answer a lot of those questions. So I'm not in a position to talk about the number of vehicles, that sort of thing here this evening, but more to give a more general update. So I think that kind of covers my update. I appreciate that you are a kind of a neighbouring ward to the Clean Air Zone, and that the councillor mentioned that there's potential concerns around people dumping their vehicles, parking their vehicles on the border and then walking, getting the bus in, etc. I'm not aware of specific schemes in your area to combat that. Part of what I wanted to ask you guys on the call was, has that come to fruition as yet? The council's approach to that has always been that there are already schemes that have gone in kind of Highgate and the St George's area, or are in the process of going in residence parking schemes to try and mitigate that, and they would be paid for in terms of the infrastructure and making them happen by proceeds from the Clean Air Zone, and then a more responsive in a reactive approach in areas such as yours, if there was to be an issue that you had reported to your councillors and to officers that people were parking all over the roads and you can't get in your drive, etc., because of the Clean Air Zone, then funding from the Clean Air Zone would be available to try and put in parking schemes. And on that wider point about funding, obviously the Clean Air Zone is not in place to raise money, it's to help improve air quality. Any revenue from the the clean air zone, so I can see the questions popping up, is ring fenced for sustainable travel, active travel measures. So it cannot be spent to improve bin services, or it can only be used for such things like pedestrianisation of the city centre, public realm improvements, cycle lanes, bus lanes, things like that. So money from the clean air zone can only be used for those purposes. Seen a couple of questions pop up in the chat. Is the air in the city centre now cleaner? Well, that's exactly the sort of information that we'll be releasing later this week. It's really important with air quality to look at it. Whatever we release on Thursday will come with kind of a caveat that you can't really measure air quality on a week or monthly basis. It has to be done by a yearly average. And then the follow-up question, how often will the air be measured and how? Well, my understanding is that we now have the most extensive air quality monitoring in the country outside of London, and that's not just in the clean air zone, not just on the border of the clean air zone, but fanning out as a satellite across the city. There is a live air quality, air pollution map on our website. Again, I can put that in the chat, etc., if people are interested. But yes, I absolutely hope that the air quality has improved in the city centre, but air quality is very much impacted by climatic conditions and other conditions as well. So it's a bit early to make a pronouncement that the air quality is better by this percentage or by this level, but I certainly hope so. I'll just put a couple of things in the chat and just while I wait to see if there's any other questions.
If you want to ask a question, I'm just trying to think. I'm used to Teams from the council, and there's a little hand that you can click on if you want to speak. I don't know what the equivalent is for Zoom. Does anybody know? Is there?
I think I know. Is
Yeah.
it the button reactions?
There is a reaction.
Reactions, yeah.
There is a
Yeah,
reaction.
there is. Yeah. Well, it's a clapping hand and a thumbs up.
Or you could use the clap or the thumbs up.
Yeah, if you go onto reactions then and click on the thumbs up if you want to speak, and then I'll know. But it may be that you can just use the chat if you want to. I'm keeping the chat up, so I've got it always up on.
Carl, it's in the participants section.
Yes.
At the bottom, raise hand.
Oh right.
No, left hand will do.
I can't. Yeah. All right. Okay. However, I can't see any anyway. So
Councillor Rice, David's got his hand up, I think, unless he was just showing that he could put his hand up.
David, do you want to speak? David?
Well, yeah, it's just to ask, the most important thing to me, is it working? Is the air now cleaner after 6 weeks of this, or is it the same, or is it even worse? And that's the figure I'm most interested to hear about. Thanks.
Peter, I know you.
Yeah, so as I've touched upon, really, with some of that will be released later this week, but with a kind of, I'm not a technical air quality professional, but everything when they describe when I'm in meetings with them is that you have to really caution against short-term measurements because there is so impacted by climatic conditions, etc. Like I said before, so I'm sure there will be data on that in what is released later this week. But what we will really need to look at is in the first 6 months, the first year. And there's another question in the chat in terms of, is there a point at which the overall programme will be reviewed to evaluate whether it's made a difference? Well, absolutely, yeah. We're already kind of, and that's not just about the air quality, that's also about the support packages. Are we supporting people in the way that we should? Can we make tweaks here and there? So we're constantly monitoring and evaluating, but there's also a requirement from us of us from central government to be doing that as well. And yeah, there's a monitoring and evaluation plan specifically, obviously, around the air quality.
Okay, all right. I can't see any other
I
hands.
think Eva
Eva.
had a hand up. Yeah.
Eva,
Thanks. How will the information be released? Sorry if you've already said this, Peter. And where do we get to see it?
It's a good question. So my understanding is that we will be kind of releasing a press release, so it will go to the media. We also have the Clean Air Zone members working group. So it will go to councillors, and then hopefully it will be disseminated. But so hopefully via the media, it will be up on our website. We have a newsletter. So let me put.
Yeah.
So it will go on social media. There will be various ways that it will be put out. And what you can do is to sign up for updates from us on the Brumbury's website. And obviously that will be, we do a monthly newsletter, and then we do a special newsletter when we've got something big that we want to announce. So I'd imagine we'll do one of those later in the week. So you can sign up on the website for that. But yeah, hopefully it will get some local and some national media coverage. I remember just after I got this job, TfL in London release their 3-month stats or their 6-month stats, and obviously I'm kind of tuned into this stuff because it's my job, but it was in national media that these were the results that London had seen after 3 or 6 months. I can't remember exactly what it was. So it will be towards the end of this week.
okay. Just to let people know, Sharon and I are going to do regular newsletters. We're going to do a printed one in September, but anybody who's on the email list for these meetings will get updates, and I'll make sure that the up-to-date information on the impact of the Clean Air Zone is on our newsletter, so that people have access to it. Okay, Peter, I don't think there's anybody else. Can I thank you very much indeed? What we'll be doing is those residents that live closest to the border, parking is already a chronic problem in parts of our ward, because people park and walk in now, regardless of the Clean Air Zone. But Sharon and I have made the case for a residence parking scheme in certain parts of the ward, and we will continue to monitor the situation and press for such schemes where they're needed. So can I thank you very much indeed, Peter?
I think there's just one further question before I do sign off, just about air quality and be monitored outside the zone. So yeah, as I said before, the air quality monitoring, as part of our funding bid from government, we asked for more money to do more monitoring. So there will be monitoring not just in the zone, not just on the border of the zone, but further out in the zone. And that first link that I put in the chat shows the existing. So that will absolutely be monitored. And the hope is obviously that by having the stick of the Clean Air Zone, helping people encouraging people to upgrade their vehicles, or even better to switch to public transport or to active travel, means that there are less polluting vehicles in the city, full stop. So if those vehicles are still going into the city centre, obviously they're passing through suburbs as they go. So I live in Kings Heath, down the 435, the Pershore Road, whatever. That those vehicles that are passing through our neighbourhoods are cleaner. And from my perspective, and I think from all of our perspective in the Clean Air, that there's just simply less of them, because we want to improve the air quality of the vehicles passing through, but we also simply just need less cars on our roads, and there's certainly less single occupancy cars. So it will absolutely be monitored. And there is one last link that I can put in about the Air Quality Action Plan, which is Birmingham City Council's kind of wider. So obviously the Clean Air Zone is kind of the figurehead, the big project of air quality in the city, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. And the Birmingham Transport Plan feeds into that as well. And that modal shift that I talked about in terms of trying to get people out of their cars onto public transport and onto more sustainable modes of transport is absolutely key. Alison, question about particular standard of air quality aiming for just a general improvement. Yeah, absolutely. We need to bring air quality within legal limits, which is a number that I should know off the top of my head, but I don't. It's 1 point something milligrams of nitrous oxide that the government has mandated us to do. And that, if you bring us within the legal limits, that's an improvement, but there is no safe level of air quality. So we should be striving to go further. But yes, the clean air zone was mandated by central government to deliver air quality within the legal limit by the end of, in their wording was the shortest possible time, which is the end of this year. Hence why we went live despite some calls to postpone again because of COVID and the impacts on the economy, etc.
Okay, Peter, could you, is it possible for you to send Sharon and I a list of where the monitoring stations are currently located in Birmingham?
It's on that link in the chat, and I'll copy in Mark Wollstonecroft, who's the kind of the air quality environmental services guy.
Okay, so if it's on that link, that's fine. I can.
Yeah. That's an interactive map, and it shows you all the sites across the city, and then you can click on each individual one, and it will show you kind of red, yellow, green in terms of levels.
Brilliant. That sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Peter. Thank you. I'm giving you the thumbs up. Thank you very much indeed. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we come on to the Dudley Road Highway Improvements. Unfortunately, we haven't got an officer from the City Council here, mainly because Saeed Mansour, who has come to 2 previous ward forums, has now left the scheme to go on to another scheme in Birmingham, and his successor is on his honeymoon. And I thought it would be a little churlish of me to request that he join us on his honeymoon. So I'm afraid you've just got me. Now I know that Kay Thomas has circulated a document. The work has started, phase 1, and the first improvement is to the junction of Dudley Road and Western Road to provide a new access to the Soho Loop development that's taking place in that little almost island where there's bounded by the canal. It's due to be completed in the summer 2022, the scheme. David, I'm going to call you in because I know you've emailed me, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your concerns. David Gadsden, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, so it's interesting. We've just been talking about clean air, haven't we? And that's something very dear to my heart. And really, a lot of the dirty air in Birmingham some of it comes from factories, but a lot of it comes from cars, particularly diesel cars, older diesel cars. So I agree with Peter about, I want to see a better transport system in the city. I want to see less cars. I want to see more walking, more cycling, and people using public transport. That's what I think we should do. And the wonderful thing is Birmingham City Council agrees with me. They've got something called the Birmingham Transport Plan. And that says exactly the same thing. It says we can't keep building wider and wider roads and expanding the road system. We've got to get people to change the way they travel. Because, for example, 1/3 of all journeys are less than a mile. Some people could walk that, couldn't they? Instead of having to take, that silly little short journey in their car. Also, along Dudley Road, we've got very poor health. We've got a lot of obesity. People probably live on average 10 years less than other parts of the city, like Sutton Coldfield or other places. So to me, I'm really pleased that the council's got a good policy on it. But really, when I look at the Dudley Road scheme, and I've spent an awful lot of time looking at it, there's so many things that are wrong about it. And I'll just list 4. Number 1, it's a dual carriageway. It's called an improvement. It's a dual carriageway. It's a much wider road. Secondly, it's not just a dual carriageway. There's actually a separation in the middle of it, which makes it even kind of even bigger because you've got perhaps another foot or something gap between the lanes. Thirdly, again, they don't mention this much. The council talk about improved junctions, but if you look at the junctions on the plan, you'll find that in many places they're 5 lanes wide. You've got 2 lanes coming one way, and the other junction's got a third lane in it now. So it's 5 junctions to cross if you're a pedestrian, which I think is very off-putting to pedestrians. And the final thing I don't like, the pavements will be narrower. And again, the council have kept quiet about this. The pavements will be narrower because they need the space to make it into a dual carriageway. And anyway, the thing I've discovered just recently, I did a Freedom of Information request to find out what the traffic forecasts were for the road, because I wanted to know how many vehicles will be travelling on it in the future. And what's really shocked me is they say that by 2037, there'll be 28% more vehicles on it. So basically, if that happens, it's completely undermined the Birmingham Transport Plan. The Birmingham Transport Plan is to get people out of cars, to have less traffic, more people walking and on the buses. You wouldn't, if the Birmingham Transport Plan worked, you wouldn't have 28% more cars by 2037. And at the moment, about 30,000 vehicles, I mustn't say cars, vehicles, go up and down that road every day, 30,000, which is an awful lot. And so if the 28% comes to pass, there'll be 8,400 vehicles more a day going along that road. So just think of the noise, the pollution, and what a horrible place it's going to be. There's nothing really there to make the place nicer. There's no benches to sit on. There's no more tree. Well, there might be 1 or 2 trees, hardly any trees. There's nothing to make it into a nice shopping centre. It's just seen by the council as a place to get from A to B for commuters who live in Stourbridge to get into Birmingham as quickly as possible. So I think it's, there's not really a modal shift. There is a bus lane. I know Carl's going to say, but there's a bus lane, but it's only peak time only. So for the rest of the time, it could be clogged up with traffic. So anyway, that's an outline. Thanks, Carl.
No, I think it's important that we see alternative views to what the council's doing. That's what makes democracy healthy. It's that the challenging and the battle of ideas which leads to better policies, I think. Just from Sharon and our perspective as local ward councillors, firstly, the problem with major transport infrastructure like this is that we don't have a budget that we can call our own for major capital projects. The problem is local authorities have to bid, and we have to bid against certain criteria that the government lay down. And the problem is they're all geared towards increasing or avoiding blockages for cars and avoiding traffic jams, because it's the traffic jams which cause pollution. If cars are idling because they're stuck in traffic, then pollution is exacerbated. Yes, the scheme could be better, David, and I've exchanged emails with you on this. I have to say the scheme is significantly better than that originally proposed by the council when we had that initial presentation. And it was comments at ward forums like this that led to those improvements. We've actually got a dedicated bus lane. It was going to be shared cycle and pedestrian lanes, but we've got dedicated cycling lanes now, which is why the pavements for pedestrians are that much narrow. It's not because of the roads, it's because we wanted to have separate cycle and pedestrian lanes, because anybody like me who walks rather than cycles knows that when a cycle comes up behind you at a very high speed, they're silent and it's very dangerous. So I think dedicated cycle lanes is the way forward. So that's Sharon and our perspective. Yes, it could be a lot better, but it's significantly improved on the original proposals, and I think it's down to the work of residents in North Edgbaston when we fed back our concerns. Let me just look at the chat to see what Alison has asked, are we losing any trees as a result of this development? I don't think we are. I don't think there are many trees along the Dudley Road, Alison. But that's something that Sharon and I are particularly keen on, to ensure that there are, you know, the environment in and around, specifically along busy dual carriageways. We need trees because they're great at converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. That's what they do, trees. It's a fantastic natural process. So the more trees that we have, the better the air quality, as well as the nicer environment that we've got. Okay, park and ride. Someone's asked about park and ride schemes. The problem with all these things is land. That's from Netes. Yeah, the scheme, this scheme has been in the making for 20 odd years. Sandwell dual carriageway, all their Dudley Road right up to the Birmingham border. So the if you carry on down Dudley Road through the shopping centre into Sandwell, you'll know that it becomes a dual carriageway at the island at the bottom of where the McDonald's is. So Sandwell did theirs 20, 30 years ago. So it's taken us a long time, but we're doing it now. Park and ride, yeah. I mean, for me, we've got to make public transport cheaper, cleaner, more efficient, and more pleasant. Some of the state of our buses. Someone emailed me this week about the lack of cleanliness on some of our buses. So yeah, that's something we all need to do. I would love to see Birmingham City Council take back into public ownership the bus service. At the moment, it's run by National Express, and they have to make a profit. We can subsidise certain routes, but we do, you know, without that control, we can't influence things as much as we would like. I can't see, will there still be a bottleneck between City Road and the roundabout? I hope not, Janet, is the answer. I sincerely hope not. I had an email through today that City Road is going to be resurfaced in the next round, but you know, let's wait and see. David, did you want to come back?
Councillor Rice, Chris Vaughan's got his hand up as well to speak.
Can I just say one quick thing? Carl, you said that there's no government money for environmental improvements. That's not true, because when the council, in the last cabinet report on Dudley Road, the council is going to the Levelling Up Fund, which we've all heard of, and they're asking for 3 things to be improved, to be done. One is Dudley Road, the second one's Erdington High Street, and I can't remember the third one, but basically the council could have applied for environmental improvements for Dudley Road instead of a road widening scheme. And that would have met the criteria, I think.
The point I made, David, is we have to bid for government rather than have a pot of capital spend each year that we can then decide whether it's roads, whether it's environment, whether it's public transport. We need to have a transport budget that gives council the flexibility to decide its own needs. That's the point I made. Chris, you wanted to speak. Chris Vaughan.
Yeah, hi, Carl. You don't have to do it now, but when you and Sharon compose your next newsletter, you might like to lay out in what way this new development of the Dudley Road is going to benefit the community. As one of our community representatives, you only have to look over at Newtown to see where our future lies, in that we have a community that would be cut in half, fragmented, so I think you've got a duty to look at this, not in terms of better, more improved car travel, but and vehicle travel, but as to what the benefits are for us all at this meeting.
As I say, Chris, there is a dedicated cycle lane. There's a dedicated bus lane. So those are two things that weren't as at the forefront of the scheme when it was originally proposed. So there have been significant improvements already to the scheme, but I understand the concerns of people that more roads leads to more traffic, etc., etc. I get that, and that's why I want to see greater investment in public transport, greater control locally over public transport, rather than us having to bid to government, so that we can decide what we want to spend the money on, rather than bidding against criteria laid down by the government. But yeah, well, let's have a look at the scheme going forward, and let's try and get some trees. Let's try and improve the environment for pedestrians, cyclists along the Dudley Road, not just there, but throughout the ward. Okay, I'm just looking, it's 20-7. We've got other issues coming up. The next one is Midland Metropolitan Hospital Transport Strategy. We've got Becky from Planning here. Becky, are you? I can't.
Hello.
Yeah, Becky,
Hello.
there you are.
Yeah, hello, Councillor Rice. Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure if, I was going to say there's a bit of an echo, but I think it stopped, so I shall carry on. Thank you for inviting me, Councillor Rice. I have attended this meeting previously, and a question was raised about the potential impact of the new hospital in terms of traffic, parking, and trip generation. And obviously this sort of follows on quite well from the previous conversations, which this is fundamentally linked to. I agreed at a previous meeting with Councillor Rice that I would work with partner organisations, so the Hospital Trust, the Transport for West Midlands, and of course with Sandwell Council, where the hospital is, to reinitiate the transport working group that's associated with the hospital. This was a well-established group prior to the pause on the building work on the hospital, and I'm not clear why it didn't then continue. But the group has recommenced. We've had an initial meeting just to understand the various roles and responsibilities, so that we can then get moving on taking things forward. And the next meeting of the group is the 10th of August, I believe. That week, certainly, because I'm on leave prior to that. So it's just as I come back from my leave on the 10th of August, we are meeting again. What I'd like to do, I think, is to take in fact some of the comments that have already been made about the concerns about the highway in the local area, but also to have an opportunity to take some more comments from this group into that meeting, so that we can start to tackle and perhaps cluster some of those issues together and start to tackle things on a theme by theme basis. So I wasn't going to say a huge amount more than that, and I'll be guided by Councillor Rice as to whether perhaps we just want to have any comments from people now, which I'm happy to take away, and or whether people want to submit comments either via the local councillors or via myself ahead of the 10th, so that I can then take them to that group. Sure. So I'm happy to take any comments, or Councillor Rice to say anything else on that.
Okay, Becky, I'll come in first, and then if people can indicate if they want to raise any issues directly with you. We've had real trouble again trying to get representatives from the hospital along to this meeting. The problem we've had is the chief exec has gone in mysterious circumstances. There's an interim chief exec, and the guy who came along who was dealing with the transport infrastructure, He's left, and Kay has emailed several people within the hospital, whatever it's called. It's not PCT anymore, is it? I forget what it's called.
I just say trust.
Yeah, the trust. And she's had no responses. So the critical thing is someone from the hospital has to be there, Becky.
Yes, that's absolutely.
And secondly, the area that immediately borders Sandwell, which is the area between Dudley Road and Aberley Street, I think it is.
The Moyet Street Park and that area.
Yeah. Well, that's all warehousing at the moment, and I understand that Sandwell are going to build quite a large residential development there. Well, that's, you know, the hospital and that residential development. There's, you know, why the forecast for the extra traffic on the road. Yeah, there's two big reasons. But we all know, don't we, around that area, particularly around the area between City Road, Dudley Road and the Sandwell border, parking, because a lot of the houses don't have drives. It's all on-street parking. It's an absolute nightmare. And remember, as part of the Dudley Road scheme, we are going to start enforcing traffic restrictions along the Dudley Road shopping area. Now, that's something that Sergeant Sanger, who's sitting in from the local police, would be interested in, because at the moment, people just completely ignore all the parking restrictions. Indeed, they park on the zigzag lines around pedestrian crossings as well. People just don't seem to care. Well, when that starts to be enforced, there's going to be a real problem for parking, and I suspect that it's going to be something that we'll be discussing in the future. So those are the key issues that I've picked up from my email inbox, as it were, that people are just so concerned about that hospital. I mean, I you know, my wife used to work at the QE, and she used to walk to work about 1.5 miles, but a lot of people will look to be parking on residential streets close by. So those are the keys. And one of the other questions that Chris has asked, I understand that as part of the original transport proposal, they were going to reroute the number 11 so that it went past the hospital. Again, I don't know how they're going to do that, because there's no left turn from City.
Yeah, my understanding is that is no longer proposed, but I'll come back and confirm that for definite. That was certainly my understanding from the conversation we had in the sort of information sharing meeting that we had week before last.
Because people thought it might have been rerouted down Chenston Road and come out at the bottom of Dudley Road, but that's good news if it's
that's certainly my understanding. And I know, Chris, you've asked about a dedicated bus service. Obviously the hospital is on quite a lot of bus routes. I think probably the approach that is being taken is to improve access to existing routes, or potentially in certain cases provide tweaks to existing routes, rather than to have I'm not quite sure where you'd want a dedicated route between going to the hospital. I mean, David, you're saying no buses go past the new hospital. I think they go very close to the new hospital. It depends where you're coming from, of course, but there are bus stops at the roundabout. I'll take those questions away to TFWM and ask for some greater clarity around bus routes, because obviously anything that was planned a number of years ago, the world has moved on, and we do need to consider whether original proposals, for example, that number 11 idea, are the right things or not. So I'll get to TFWM.
Janet, did you want to come in? Janet Smith, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, thanks, Carl. I reiterate a lot of what Carl has said, and we had a very good meeting at one point with Toby Lewis. I live in Shenston Road, and I was saddened too that he'd left after he'd walked the area. My biggest concern is that they will use Shenston Road as a rat run to get from City Road to the hospital, as people do now. They will just go down Shenston Road to the hospital, avoid all of Dudley Road, all of half of City Road, and that's what happens now. And I just think, I've been saying this for years now, they need to reverse the no left turn at City Road. When City Road goes on to Dudley Road, they need to reverse that so that traffic can at least come off Shenston Road. And I'm aware that they're proposing to put 20-mile-an-hour speed limits around City Road, Rotten Park Road, primary schools. Well, I hope they put them down Shenston Road as well. Otherwise, people will, in order to avoid the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, they'll just use good old Shenston Road again. So I just implore Becky to rethink this reversing of the no left turn.
I'll ask the group to, the highways guys and the transport guys within the group to give it consideration and explain why they can or can't do that. I mean, if it can be done, and it helps, I think that's the right thing to do. If there's a reason not to do it, we'll make sure we can come back and explain what that is.
Okay.
How will I get to know what the
So we'll come back. I think we'll try and come back through Councillor Rice, and we can then get that information to you in the best possible way, whether it's via Councillor Rice or Kay or some other route. But I think that's going to have to be my starting point. Yeah.
Becky, you did say that at the next meeting that we have, which will hopefully be in sort of September, sort of October time, you plan to bring a proper report on that Smethwick Birmingham corridor working group to get a proper report to the next board.
So you mean the transport working group? Do you mean?
Yes.
Councillor Rice. Yeah, that would be my aim. I will say I'm trying to get this back up and running. I am unlikely to be the chair of the group. So I will need to make sure that the group and the various organisations represented are able to meet those requirements. If for whatever reason we don't think we can bring something back, Councillor Rice, I'll come back to you as quickly as I can after that meeting on the 10th of August. I don't particularly see it being an issue, but I will not be the chair of the group, and it will not sit within my portfolio. I'm doing this to kind of help it on its way. So.
Carol's made the point in the chat about another case of a development without looking at the impact on communities with regard to traffic. I agree, which is why we've continually raised it at these meetings. The problem with this particular hospital is that it's right on the border between Birmingham and Sandwell, and people will know how difficult it is to get departments within one authority to communicate effectively. Think about what it's like to get different local authorities to communicate. But yeah, Janet and everybody else will keep on, because we know how disastrous it will be if we don't plan properly for not just the increased traffic, but any other issues arising from the big hospital. One thing that Toby Lewis did say to us, Janet, which always stuck in my mind when we talked about the impact of the new hospital, it's only the acute side which is moving to Sandwell, to the new hospital site. All the outpatients will still take place on the original Dudley Road hospital site. So it's not going to be like the QE where everything's concentrated on one site. I mean, I think it's good that it's going to be split between the two sites. And I think they're going to have a shuttle bus between for staff who have to work between both sites. So I think you know, that's something that is in our favour, that all the services won't be concentrated on that one site. Is there anything else? There is a car park at the hospital, David, but and the great thing about Toby Lewis, Janet, when he met, he said that if you see any, because they have a staff car park pass in their window, and he said, if you see anybody with a Sandwell Hospital's pass parking on residential streets, let us know the registration number, because we will take action against our staff that are parking on residential streets. So Becky, that's something else we would like to see, is that the hospital are proactive in policing their own staff who may think that parking on residential streets is fine. Okay, are there any other points that people wish to make on this issue? As I say, it's going to be a standing item, I think, and we may even have meetings in between the forum to update those residents that live quite closest to the development. I can't say, nobody else I can't see. So
no, nobody's got their hand up.
Okay, we'll move on. Becky's dealing with this one as well, which is the Edgbaston Reservoir Master Plan. Becky, over to you again.
So Councillor Rice has invited me to provide an update on the progress with the master plan. I know there's a number of other people on the call who are involved in this as well. There's a little bit of background. We originally consulted on a draft master plan in the summer of 2019, had a really significant and positive public response in terms of lots of engagement with local people and lots of people who had strong feelings about the reservoir and the future of surrounding sites. Working with a number of the community groups through a community partnership forum, it's become clear, I suppose, over time that there were a number of fairly significant changes that we needed to make to the master plan. It was more than a case of a few tweaks here and there, as a result of which there is a need to do a further round of formal consultation. At the moment, we are working with the community consultation forum, community partnership forum. I forget what we call ourselves sometimes, and also with key stakeholders and landowners to finalise a document which has a local agreement that we can then take out to broader public consultation and carry out the formal consultation required for planning purposes ahead of then taking a document for adoption. So the intention, subject to reaching agreement, I think with the community partnership for trust who we've been working with.
We're losing you.
Don't know what's going on now.
Oh, you're okay now.
Okay. We're essentially, I'll try and keep it quick in case I disappear again. The aim will be to take a robust draft out to public consultation to carry out the formal consultation in the autumn, with an ambition to adopt the master plan towards the end of the year, subject to sort of meeting cabinet timescales, etc. So for those people involved in the community partnership forum, I know there's various things going backwards and forwards between you at the moment. Sorry you didn't hear most of it, but I think I was probably telling you stuff that you already know, hopefully. So happy to chat separately. As I say, the document would go out to formal consultation in the autumn, and seek to adopt an SPD towards the end of the year. The question of whether or not demolishing the Tower Ballroom is the best way forward, that was actually confirmed. The approach, the policy position about redeveloping the Tower Ballroom site was set out in the Birmingham Development Plan. So the SPD is not reviewing that. The SPD is not the place to review that. The Birmingham Development Plan was widely consulted on ahead of its adoption in 2017 and went through a formal examination in public as well.
Okay. Okay, is that Becky? Is that it?
Unless anyone's got any further questions,
Yeah,
but that was where I was going to.
I'm going to bring Tom Jones in now, because Tom, you sent an email that you wanted to raise the issue of the demolition of the Tower Ballroom.
Yes.
And we thought this was although, as Becky has quite rightly said, the two, whilst they're connected, they are separate, but I thought we could deal with Edgbaston Reservoir all on one item. So over to you, Tom.
Yes, it's particularly about the demolition. And I think that the point that needs to be made is it was never actually discussed with the community representatives. There was an implication all the way through, but there was never an opportunity to explore whether in fact the building could be repurposed in some way. And it's suddenly gone ahead as a decision that seems to have been agreed, but in fact it wasn't agreed. It was implied, but it was never discussed.
Okay. Well, look, we've all had an opportunity to comment on the proposal. The notice for the demolition, I think it closed, was it on the 12th of July, Becky, it closed? Something like that?
There was an extension of time to the planning application. So the planning application will go to committee on, I believe, the 19th of August, if that's a Thursday.
Yeah. So if people want to pass comment on the proposal to demolish the Tower Ballroom, then I suspect that the council will still consider any submissions that people make. I'm going to tell you, Tom, that the four councillors, we did discuss this. That's myself and Sharon from North Edgebaston and Albert Bohr and Kath Hartley from Ladywood. And we did a joint response to the application to demolish the Tower Ballroom. I didn't circulate it whilst the consultation was going on, because we didn't want to influence people one way or the other as to whether it's a good thing or not. But I'm going to tell you at this meeting now that we welcome the proposal to demolish the building, because it's been boarded up for a considerable time. We don't think that there is a commercial viability around the venue moving forward, because there will be a considerable investment in upgrading the facility. And in the meantime, a lot of antisocial behaviour, Kath and Albert tell us, and there has been traveller incursion on the car park in the relatively recent past. We do go on to talk about the loss of an important local community facility. It's over a page long, our response. So it isn't just, we make several points about how it's a well-loved historic site, and that we want to see that recognised in any future development, or if it's merely incorporated into landscaping of the rest of the reservoir. We haven't talked about what may go on the site, if anything. That is a separate issue, and there will be separate planning application for that, and we will have a good debate about what happens to the site once it's cleared, or if it is cleared, if the proposal is accepted to to clear it, then we will have a controlled debate about that here at the Ward Forum and in many, many other forums, I suspect, as well. For me, in particular, the thing that I'm particularly keen on is that horrible concrete extension that goes over the walkway by the reservoir, and actually the pillars are actually in the water. And the critical thing is, and Becky hopefully will confirm this, that any new development will be 20 metres away from the reservoir shoreline, which is going to be that 20 metres is a massive improvement on what is very narrow, dark and dingy part of the walkway. So those are the main points. What I will propose to do, I'm going to send what we sent in, and I'll send it to Kay, and she will circulate it to everybody on the mailing list, so that you've all got a copy of what the 4 councillors said about the demolition, or the proposal to demolish the Tower Ballroom. And I emphasise, the demolition doesn't mean to say that there's a foregone conclusion about what will go on that site. That will be a separate planning application. Tom, do you want to come back?
Yes, I'm very disturbed that conversations like that were going on that weren't shared with local people who, it was known, were very concerned about the Tower Ballroom site, not only in terms of the building, but what happens to the site afterwards. It does seem rather bizarre to inform people of that discussion now. Could we not have known about this earlier on?
Well, Tom, we didn't want to influence. I mean, people, we
would like information.
But yeah,
this is the point. We can make our own minds up as to whether we're going to be influenced or not.
That's exactly what we wanted you to make your own minds up. It was important that people knew how to comment, and we made sure that everybody that we knew who was interested in the reservoir got copies of the notice from planning of the proposal to demolish, so that people could make their own submissions.
Could I come back on that, Carl?
Yeah.
The circulation list for that notification was extraordinarily out of date. You really do need to look at your circulation lists when planning announcements are publicised and the planning number is given and people are asked for their responses. It's extraordinarily out of date, and it's also misses the point, because a lot of local people and local organisations who put forward very strong views about this were not included in that circulation. The lists do need really looking at.
Well, look, Sharon and I are particularly keen on ensuring that as many local people get notices of planning applications as possible, and anybody who asks us to receive notices. The problem we've got is that officers of various residence groups change over time, and it's incumbent upon the organisation to notify the council of any change of details. But Sharon and I do what we can, Tom, to make sure that as many local people who want to receive planning applications receive them. We do quite a number each month. We get requests and we forward them on to make sure that people do. But look, the law says, although there's a closing date on that application to demolish, I do know that the case law is that so long as the decision hasn't been made, the council are obliged to consider any comments that people make prior to the decision being taken. So the closing date, whilst it's important, it doesn't mean to say that they won't consider any comments after that date. So.
Councillor
Can I
Rice,
come
Chris
back
and Eva
to you
have
on
got their
another
hand
point?
up, and Curry. Chris, Eva and Curry have got their hands
Okay,
up to speak.
Chris first then.
To anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm Chris Vaughan, and I chair the Reservoir Community Consortium, which consists of over 20 local stakeholders, that's residents, groups, users of the reservoir, a very, very full amount of people. So I'm going to ask you now, Carl, in front of everybody else, with you as our local representative, representing the views of the local community to the council, and not the other way around, could you please postpone the demolition of the Tower Ballroom on September the 26th, because it hasn't been fully discussed with the planners, because we undertook to sit round the table with the planners and discuss every aspect of the development of the Tower Ballroom site and the wider reservoir. This has not been discussed with us. There's been no studies put forward, and maybe we missed a trick when the big master plan was published, because we didn't notice that you changed the leisure designation of the site to a brownfield site. And I'm surprised, as a local representative, you and Albert and Kath at the time, knowing the history and the feelings around that particular aspect of the reservoir, didn't inform us that that's what had happened. So what is happening, Carl, is that the council have been, the reservoir users have been kept in the dark. We did a study yesterday of 100 people, and everyone was surprised it was happening. There was one single notice put up outside to inform everyone, and you hope to get away with that. So as far as we are concerned, the council have reverted back to their old posture, which is either you oppose it or you're in favour. You don't sit down and discuss. And if you know, the Ofsted recently had a report, Birmingham City Council is not very good at collaboration. So we are feeling that we've been let down, that there's been bad faith here. We sat down in good faith. We've spent hours and hours and hours of our own leisure time discussing these matters. And now you tell us, oh, there's going to be a bulldozer outside on the 26th of September, and we're left high and dry, thinking that we're in a constructive conversation with our planners, and everything was being kept in the dark, and you were having meetings behind the scenes and not keeping anybody informed.
Well, Chris, no one's done anything behind the scenes as far as North Edgbaston or Ladywood is concerned. Let me just go through the chronological chronology of events. I heard about the demolition through emails from local residents who noticed that something had been put up on the side of the town ballroom. That wasn't put up by the planners. It was put up by Civico, who are, to all intents and purposes, they're part of the city council, but they're the building side, building control side.
So every
it went up prematurely, Chris. And when you know, when we heard about it, we got in touch with Becky, and Becky made sure that far more notices went out. I think there were about 5 or 6 pinned up rather than just the one. And all the people as part of the who are on the mailing list for planning applications received them. So I know it's commonplace to think that there is conspiracies within local authorities. My experience tells me, Chris, it's usually cock up. And from my experience, my knowledge of this particular incident it was clearly a cock-up that somebody from a Civico put that notice up when they shouldn't have done. That's my sincere and honest belief.
Oh yeah, I'm not doubting your sincerity, but the fact of the matter is that there's been meetings going on and there's information not being shared with the local community. We've been sitting down with our planners. It took us 15 months for us to get information about the criteria for viability of the site, but the actual repurposing of the Tower Ballroom was never mentioned. You've allowed the Tower Ballroom to fall into disrepair. Sound like it was planned that you'd allow vandals in there, and now you're saying, oh, it has to be knocked down because it's not in a fit state. So all the time the community is being left out in the dark, and the council have gone ahead. You've got a capital receipt now for knocking down that building. So it now means that you are now going to take what for 150 years had been a public amenity. You're going to hand that over to the private sector, and though you might say, oh, and no decision has been made, that decision has been made, and so we're again, nobody's been consulted. So I'm only just saying to you, Carl, that there will be a campaign on this, and you'll have to face, perhaps, to answer questions on behalf of the community. That's who you represent, not on behalf of the council.
Yep. Okay. Well, look, for me, when I first moved to Birmingham in 1979, it was a stone's throw away from the reservoir in York Road, just off the Hackney Road. So the reservoir has been part of my life in Birmingham ever since 1979. And I've always hated that pinch point where the Tower Ballroom is. I cannot believe that anybody would object to the fact that any development, any proposal would take any building 20 meters away from the shoreline. Imagine what that will mean for that part of the reservoir to everybody. That's why, that's one of the main reasons. If I thought that building, I know it's got a history. I know it's you know, in its day, lots of local people visited, but you know, things have moved on. I don't think that venue has got a real purpose moving forward in the short term.
Well, can we have the discussion? Can we have the discussion?
And look, I've only sent this in as the four of us have sent this in as local councillors. We haven't said that the community support it. We haven't said that, you know, we're right. It's just our opinion, Chris. That's all it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's your opinion, and we have opinions as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the roundhouse has been repurposed. So why not can't we have a look at the Tower Ballroom and see what might be salvageable on behalf of the local community?
Okay. Yeah. Look, I think the roundhouse is a wonderful development, but I don't think the two are comparable. Chris.
No, probably not. But they went down that route rather than demolish it.
Okay. Well, look, Carol's asked me, can I commit to community use on the site rather than residential use? We do need to have some community facility within that, any potential new development. I know there's people out there that would like to see the area just greened and incorporated into the reservoir grounds. I know that other people want to see community facilities. What I would say to you, Carol, is that we've all been contacted recently by Birmingham Settlement, who are putting in a second planning application to expand the community facility that they're building on the other side of the reservoir, which will have public toilets, other facilities, educational facilities, etc., etc., etc. So there is an existing community facility on the reservoir site or very close to it, and that is going to be expanded going forward. So look, there are different opinions and different views about the reservoir. I get that. I, you know, have put forward my views. I did a draft for the other three councillors, and they all came back with amendments. In particular, wanted some recognition that the Tower Ballroom is an historic site, beloved by many people over years, and want to see something incorporated into any potential new development, acknowledging that historical site. We talk about the loss of a local community facility, but we do point out the Birmingham settlement development on the opposite side. So we haven't just said, please demolish it. We, you know, it's a full page response with 5 or 6 points. So look, rather than me just read it out verbatim, I'll ensure that Kay circulates it tomorrow morning, I promise you, so that I welcome your comments. If you think we've got it wrong as local ward councillors, then fine. I'll take that.
Birmingham settlement is not publicly owned. The reservoir is publicly owned by Birmingham City Council. So you shouldn't be relying on a charity to provide something that the council should be providing.
Okay. Well, look, I ran charities most of my life, and as far as I'm concerned, some of them are better than the local authority at providing community facilities.
So,
personal view.
A matter of control and governance, Carl.
Yeah, I understand all that. I understand all that.
Okay. Eva's still got a hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to call Eva in now. Eva.
Thank you all. There's 2 points I want to make, really. The first is that just in response to what you've just been talking about, and that is that I agree that Birmingham settlement site will provide a community resource. Some additional space and facilities will be provided, and that's really good. That's to be lauded. However, we have to bear in mind that there are other developments in the area that are being approved, have had planning applications approved, which don't have enough amenity space for the properties that are being built. And those are being approved on the basis that it's okay because we've got the reservoir that they can use as their amenity space. So whilst it's really good that Birmingham Settlement are developing the site, which will be an investment in the community, we have to recognise that the community that will be using the reservoir is expanding massively and will continue to do so. That's my first point. My second point relates to the BAT survey that has been carried out in anticipation of the approval of a demolition on the Tower Ballroom site. The survey that I read didn't appear to examine the overhang of the Tower Ballroom, which leans out over the walkway and onto the water. It did seem to thoroughly examine everywhere else. We understand from Councillor Ward's response to one of our colleagues and neighbours that the report states that no birds or bats have been found nesting anywhere. And if you walk under the overhang, Councillor Rice, I'm sure that you will look up and be able to see the birds nesting. And therefore, I think it is imperative that the engineers that have carried out the bat survey come back to us and either provide the detailed information of the survey they've done of that overhang, or another engineer is sent in to do so, because we don't see that information in the survey that's been provided. Thank you.
Okay, point 6 of our submission, and I'll read this because it answers that last point you made, Eva, very well. I'm not an expert on bats. I've got them in my garden. I often go out at dusk to watch them flying around. Since the announcement of the proposed demolition, all 4 of us have received emails from local residents questioning whether the appropriate surveys environment, nature conservation, risk assessments, etc., have taken place by either the City Council or appropriate external agencies. We would like assurances and confirmation that these have indeed taken place. So we have incorporated that particular concern into our submission.
Thank you for that response, Carl. And that is in fact pretty much the response that Council Leader Ward also gave. I'm asking a specific question to clarify that the overhang has been evaluated as part of the Tower Ballroom. And that's because that's where we believe there may be an issue. And I'm happy for if the engineers have done that, please show us where in the report it's evidenced.
I don't know. I'll have to
I know.
I'm making a note now. Overhang of present. Okay.
Thank you.
That particular question, you need to give me time. Okay. But look, I hear what people are saying, but and I know that people, there's a group that want to save the Tower Ballroom, but there are equally people who will be quite glad to see it demolished and the walkway to have a defensible green space of 20 metres between the shoreline and any potential new development. So we were going to get an extra 20-metre strip of green space within the reservoir by that site. And that's to be honest with you, that's my main reason for supporting the demolition. Personally, as a local resident of Birmingham, I can't wait to see that walkway improved all the way around the circuit of the reservoir. That's my main reason. Okay. Are there any other speakers? Kay, can you see?
Corinne has had a hand up for ages.
Corinne, or Corinne, where are you? You're probably on mute.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I agree it's very ugly, that bit on the side. I didn't realise about the wildlife, which of course is very important. But everybody seems to give the excuse to pull down the Tower Ballroom because a small piece on the side is ugly. And also, the Tower Ballroom has been left. I walk past it very often. And it has been left. It's been left to rot. It's a very beautiful, very elegant building inside. And there are plenty of ideas for how the community would like to use it. The most recent thing that I went to was a production of the Lady Macbeth, where the place was packed with people who were interested in that production, where the audience followed the actors around. There's an endless number of ideas. When I wrote to, is it Thomas Morris, who hasn't replied, and gave him so many ideas of how it could be used by the community. It is a beautiful building. It's history. It can't just be destroyed like the old library was. I think it's absolutely appalling. And that's that little bit of paper stuck on a lamppost saying that demolition is going to start on the 26th of September. That wants to be sorted out because they should not be allowed to start demolishing before all these issues have been thoroughly sorted out. And Carl, can you really guarantee that 20 metres of green will suddenly appear when it's demolished?
Well, I will lay down in front of anything. If there isn't that 20 metres, then you can expect me to
eat your words.
I'm not a violent man.
I'm not sorry. I'm sorry, Carl. I'd like to go and lie down in front of the bulldozer if they're going to start.
All right.
Start pulling it down. We can all talk like that. But the point is it really sensible? Is it really possible to say that it's going to be 20 metres of green in front of it?
Yeah,
That glossy magazine that you produced You've got nothing like that.
That's going to be in the which is what we're talking about really. This is the master plan. Becky, does the master plan mention the 20 metres?
It certainly mentions the setback. I assume it mentions 20 metres, but if it doesn't, we can make sure it does.
No, it's a glossy magazine about the sort of seafront, but not the seafront, the reservoir front. You know, the boats being tied up and all that sort of thing on that site.
Yeah.
Can I just come in quickly, Carl? It can't be 20 metres because you've got the TS Vernon about 2 metres from the water's edge. Unless you're going to demolish the TS Vernon, you won't have 20 metres.
Yes, Vernon's going to be demolished as well.
They're going to
being rebuilt on the same site, Carl. I've seen the plans.
Set back.
How much?
I believe it's 19.8 metres or thereabouts.
Oh, okay.
It's we couldn't quite fit 20 metres and the access for the boats, but I believe it's 19.8 or 19.6 but it's
ridiculous to talk like that. Absolutely ridiculous. What is going to be put in the tower ballroom space?
Well,
what's going to be put there?
That's what the supplementary planning document that we're working with the community consultation forum on and we'll be consulting on in the autumn sets out to show. So that's the purpose of that.
By that time, the tower ballroom will have been pulled down. You've got to delay it. You've got to delay the destruction of the tower ballroom. That can't happen when things have not been decided. What's going to be in its place is absolute nonsense.
Well, the Birmingham Development Plan sets out very clearly the future of the site, and the SPD is a supplementary planning document. That's its purpose. So the policy position is set by the Birmingham Development Plan, which was adopted.
Get it postponed. Get the destruction of the tower ballroom postponed. There is not time now. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of decisions not properly made. We don't even know what's going to be in its place. It's absolutely absurd.
Okay. I think we've explored all we possibly can on this issue. Is anybody else who hasn't spoken wishes to speak?
Councillor Rice, Stassi has his hand up. He hasn't spoken, and Tom's also got his hand up, and Chris Vaughan's also got his hand up. But Stassi hasn't spoken yet.
Stassi, if you want to come in, and then I'll take in Chris, and I'll leave Tom to finish. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor, you said earlier that you have your own personal views on the ballroom. Can I just press you just to make that, put it on the record and tell us exactly what your views are? So you've already said that you're in favour of the demolition. I accept that. But what do you want to see in its place? And can you be quite specific about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to tell you because I'm trying to get people to understand that the issue about what goes on the site is separate from the demolition. Whatever goes on that site is going to be an improvement at present, because the tower ballroom, it's too, I just think anybody who doesn't want to see a 20-metre gap, 20 metres between the water's edge and any potential new development in that critical part of the reservoir, that's what I am in favour of, and why I think
a detail, Carl, a mere detail. Sorry to interrupt.
Well,
I think most people will agree that the state of the tower ballroom as it is not good. But until we've got a better, clearer idea, quite a specific idea of what's going to replace it, people are not happy to move forward. So the option still has to be to improve what's there now, or don't move forward until we know what's going to replace it. And I think that's what people are really concerned about, because by demolishing it, what are we going to get in its place? Because once it's demolished, the easy option could be swanky flats, which nobody wants.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll change them.
Do you want to help me out here in terms of the technical planning process?
So the Birmingham Development Plan sets out the future for this site, which is residential that family-led residential. I don't appreciate people laughing at the policy, and I don't think that's helpful. And I'm giving up my evening to be in this meeting as you are. So I think as Chris has said, you know, debate has got to be grown up and has got to be done properly. So if Councillor Rice would like me to continue, I will answer the question, but I won't do it with interruptions.
Okay, Becky, if people can put themselves on mute while Becky's speaking, please.
The point that I'd like to make is that the Birmingham Development Plan sets out an allocation for this site, which will see residential-led development to deliver much needed housing in the area, in the city as a whole, with community uses. In the absence of demolishing the Tower Ballroom, that policy position cannot be delivered.
I'm sorry, Becky, I didn't understand that.
So there's a development plan for the city, the Birmingham Development Plan, which was adopted in January 2017 and which was consulted on widely and went through examination in public. That sets a policy about the future of this site, and what the supplementary planning document does is exactly that. It supplements that policy. So the delivery of the policy that is set out in the development plan is not feasible whilst the Tower Ballroom is retained. So whatever the detail of the development as proposed through the supplementary planning document is, the overarching policy to which the council has adopted sets out the need to deliver a residential-led scheme on this site.
So if I understand that correctly, then the Tower Ballroom has to be demolished before you can decide what's going to replace it.
It doesn't have that timeline is not necessarily tied together, but what I am saying is that delivering a policy compliant scheme on the site is not possible without the demolition of the ballroom.
I still don't get it.
The critical thing, Stassi, is that any particular proposal for that site has yet to be worked up. Okay. So at the moment it's zoned for potentially for housing, not exclusively. There's a desire to have some community facilities within the site, which will be smaller than its current site because of that 20-metre buffer, as I've mentioned. But there will be a separate planning process on specific plans for the site if the Tower Ballroom is demolished. Which is
how much say do people get in that? I mean, obviously it'll go to consultation, but to me, it almost sounds like a fait accompli.
There's an opportunity for people to comment on the supplementary planning document, which is what I talked about at the beginning of my presentation, and what I was invited here to talk about, which is currently being developed in partnership or updated in partnership with the community forum, and which will be taken out to consultation more broadly in the autumn, so that people can have a say on the proposals for the Tower Ballroom site. That will be compliant with the overarching framework for the city, which is the Birmingham Development Plan. Okay. And by its nature, it has to be. We can't depart from the development plan.
Okay, I can see there are other hands up, so I'll stand back now.
Okay, well look,
thank you.
I'm just worried about the time. I don't think we could talk about this forever. At the moment, no one said anything to alter my personal view that the reservoir, particularly for a walker like me, would be substantially improved if there was a 20-metre buffer zone between any development and the water's edge. That's my personal view. I did say I was going to bring Chris back in, and then Tom. Chris.
Thanks, Carl. I just wanted to say, when you did your little summary of the discussion, you actually misrepresented what I was saying, because there's the old council view that you're either for something or you're against it. You're either for demolition or against it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should discuss all the alternatives. You have a personal view. I have a personal view. Your job is to represent the views of everybody in the community. And I'm not advocating a straight demolition. I'm saying let's look at what other alternatives there are, and that's how it should be. That's healthy. And if we're going to do any more further consultation, can we look at the 400 replies that we got at the last consultation that hasn't been interpreted? There's been no report on it. So if you're going to have further consultation, make sure you report back what the public think.
Sure. The problem with being a public representative, and I remember going on a dealing with stress course in the early days, Chris, back in the 1980s. The problem is, I don't think I've ever come across an issue that I've had to make a decision on where there's been a consensus. There's always differences of opinion, and that's the problem public representatives find themselves in. Do they listen to the loudest voices? Do they try and you know, we try and make the best decisions we can with the information and the knowledge we've got. But yet my instinct is always to do what the majority of local people want. But there's a significant number of people who will say things to me privately about the demolition, but they won't speak out in public. Chris, you know that there's always people who have opinions that don't express it in public forums, but they'll send me emails, they'll send me, you know, we'll have a chat when we go around the reservoir. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, but believe me, I wish being a public representative was as straightforward as sometimes. Tom, over to you.
You're muted, Tom.
It could be made somewhat more straightforward if we were honest about the language we are using. For example, the word site in relation to the Tower Ballroom has been bandied around quite considerably without defining exactly what that site is. Is it the footprint of the building? Is it the footprint of the building plus the car park next to it? Is it the footprint of the building plus the car park next to it, plus the coach park behind, further up towards Osler Street? And now the issue of where housing comes on all that site, whatever we mean by site, has never been discussed. And the word housing, we also need to look at, because there is no way executive housing overlooking the reservoir, and that's what it would probably be, will be social housing. It would be sold off to people who want to boast of having a view over the reservoir. And as far as we know, that is what is in mind at the moment. We've plenty of evidence that the council has a very clear view of what it wants on that site. And we need to be very honest about whether or not that is the case. We're being told here that it's open, we don't know yet. I would suggest, in fact, that the council knows perfectly well what it wants on that site. It's just that it's not sharing that with everybody at the moment. So I think we need a lot more honesty about this and a lot more careful use of language in order to be able to discuss and construct a whole set of arguments and discussions in a reasonable frame of mind and in a way that's going to enable us to arrive at some collaborative solution to these problems.
Sorry, Carl, you're muted.
You're on mute, Councillor Rice.
Yeah, there you are. We always fall into this trap, don't we? Becky's had to go. She's got childcare arrangements. The site, Tom, I think it includes the car park. I'm not sure about the coach park. Again, I can find out. But as to what type of housing it is, I know people have their suspicions, but believe me, no decisions have been made. We don't even know who the developer might be. It may well be Birmingham Municipal Housing. So the City Council may be the lead developer. I don't know. But all that is a separate issue. The density, the height, the type, all that sort of thing is going to be discussed once proposals are drawn up. And I give you this pledge as a local ward councillor. I'm not going to wait until a planning application is made publicly available. I want to have an opportunity for you, as well as local public representatives, have a view on what should be on the site before any planning application is drawn up. So I give you that pledge that you can, we can make the point about what type of housing, the height, and all those other things associated with a planning application before any scheme is drawn up either by the council or by a preferred development partner. I give you that assurance. Okay. Anybody else? Kay, can you see?
No, nobody else has got their hand up.
Look, I know how controversial this issue is, and I know how it can lead to people having differences of opinion. But that's life, isn't it? We can't agree on everything. Okay, we're coming on now to the North Edgbaston Ward Plan priorities. Now, Kay, have these priorities been circulated?
Yes, they have. They went out with the agenda.
Now, if you remember, we're supposed to update these every year, but unfortunately, we're about a year behind because of COVID. We had a special ward meeting on the Saturday, on the 26th of January, and we had a sort of series of people circulated around on different issues, and then on the 28th of March, we decided what the top priorities were. And let me just run through them because there's only 7. Housing, we wanted to see a break put on HMOs and privately rented properties. And we wanted to get the council to consider all these new housing developments that were in the pipeline, what the impact on local services and highways infrastructure was. Parking, residential parking, inconsiderate parking on pavements, etc. Litter, fly tipping and rubbish was number 3. Not enough youth services in the ward was number 4. Impact of new developments, particularly the hospital, was number 5. Parks, open space, and an emphasis on community safety in Summerfield Park and the reservoir. And finally, crime and community safety throughout everything that we were doing. That was a concern for everybody. So I think with housing, if we can just stick to housing at the moment, I wasn't aware that there was a exempt accommodation would grow as much as it has in the city. But you know that Sharon, through her cabinet member responsibility, and me through my scrutiny responsibility, are both tackling exempt accommodation. I can tell you that we've had over 80 submissions to the scrutiny report from residents groups around Birmingham, talking about the impact having unregulated, no local control over exempt accommodation. So I'm going to add exempt accommodation in to the housing. And I guess picking up what we've just heard, people want to see a greater emphasis on social housing with any new build development. That's something that Sharon and I are particularly keen on. So are you happy for exempt accommodation to be included in the areas of concern and to see more social housing within the ward in any future developments? around North Edgbaston. Yeah, I'm getting nods and thumbs up. Is that okay? When it comes to parking, all we've got at the moment is inconsiderate parking. Do we want to be a bit more proactive and say that we want to see residents parking schemes in key parts of the ward? Anybody want to speak on parking problems? Janet?
Yeah, I mean, the roads leading on to Shenstone Road, sometimes people aren't just parking on the pavement, they're double parking, so that you've got literally cars parked either side and then another car parked next to that one all night. Where are the traffic wardens coming along to book the people?
Yeah.
I know that you're saying they're going to do that on Dudley Road, but they need to expand that and at least stop people doing that, because while there are no consequences, people are doing that. So yeah.
Greater enforcement.
Much greater enforcement, Carl.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak on highways? What are people's views on parking on pavements? Council recently surveyed all ward councillors, and at the moment, well, there were three options: keep it as it is, which is ambiguity, no, zero tolerance, and then to take action where there is clear and obvious obstruction. Stacey, I'll call you in first.
Yeah, I think as far as pavements are concerned, it's pretty clear. It's a pavement, it's for pedestrians, it's for parents with pushchairs, people in wheelchairs, you know, the blind and visually impaired who are obstructed by vehicles. You know, it's a pavement, it's not parking for cars. I think it's as simple and as black and white as that.
Yeah, okay. David Geisen, you had your hand up, no?
Yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it? Because on my estate, all the pavements are covered with cars, and I think if you tried to stop them parking on the pavements, there'd be an absolute riot here. But I personally agree with Stacey, but I think politically it might be very unpopular. But certainly, as you said, Carl, the middle option, which is to really clamp down on people who are parking in such a way that, you know, it's causing a major obstruction. There definitely should be a lot more enforcement about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the initiative, I think the government are consulting on it, and they've asked local authorities for their views, but we were given three options, as I say: ambiguity, which is the current situation, zero tolerance, but then tolerance unless there is a clear and obvious obstruction. So those are the three options. I think I went for zero tolerance. Because I walk everywhere.
I totally agree with Stacey. A pavement is for pedestrians, and there's people on mobility scooters as well as wheelchairs. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Zero tolerance.
I once asked the cabinet member what would happen if a group of people stood on the road and refused to move. Well, they would be causing an obstruction, and they would be prosecuted. So. What happens when a car is parked on a pavement and blocks people from walking along? Surely similar type action. And I feel the same about overgrown shrubs and bushes and hedges. If it was blocking the road, you can bet your life someone would move it pretty damn quick. If it's blocking a pavement, it's left for ages and ages and ages. Okay. Now, litter, fly tipping and rubbish. I guess they're all still priorities for you. Yeah, Janet?
I think, I don't know what's happened to the environmental health lately, because Shenstone Road do regular monthly litter picks and have done for the last 15 to 20 years while Britain in Bloom was on. And now I think there must have been a change of depots, because they do a litter pick, they leave all the bags outside one particular house, and then they hope they'll get collected later that day. And this hasn't happened. So you're ending up where we've got bags of litter pick and then people dumping on the, because the council are not
Janet, who's the coordinator? Can you email me who the coordinator is of the community litter pick?
Yeah,
I'll make
it's Sarah.
And I'll make sure someone from the council gets in touch with them to make sure this doesn't happen. Because
Will do, Carl.
we are going to increase the number of community support people who help those residents that go and help clean up their immediate area. And if it's not happening in your part of the ward, I'll make sure that it is. So if you can let me know. But I'm guessing that litter, fly tipping and rubbish is still a priority, yeah? Youth services. That's still a priority, yeah? And the impact of the new developments, the hospital and the like, you still want that included as part of our priorities? Yeah. And the parks, more public open space and better managed, better maintained. I'm hoping that you'll still think that is something that we want to do.
Sorry, can I just backtrack you just one point there, Councillor? The impact of new developments. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative. I'm a resident of Port Loop. I was a former resident of, I used to live on Hagley Road, so I was North Edgbaston. I'm now officially Ladywood.
Yes.
But,
welcome.
Thank you. I hope others on the call will agree with me that somewhere like Port Loop, although it's been a little bit controversial in places, it actually has had a positive impact in a lot of areas. There is a good park there. There's another bigger park to come. There's going to be access to the canal, so that's going to improve the sort of fabric of the area. And also the community events that are going on there, organised both by residents and people like Civic Square, who are going to move into one of the commercial buildings as it's refurbished, are putting on some very, very good community activities. So again, I'm not speaking for everybody on the call, but I hope people do appreciate that the impact can be positive as well as negative.
Yeah, I think it's, if a development's done right, Stassi, then all those things.
That's the key.
Yeah,
that's the key.
That's the key. I think the main concern here is the hospital. I'll be perfectly frank with you, because as we've heard, things just aren't coordinated in the right way at the moment. And as I think Eva mentioned, there's a few large planning applications gone in associated with the Port Loop, where the developers are saying we don't need to have open space because you've got the reservoir and we've got the Summerfield Park. Now, sooner or later, the reservoir's seen a massive increase in usage in recent months because of COVID, and we want to stop developers using the argument, well, there's enough public open spaces around, we don't have to do anything. That's the key issue for us, I think, is making sure.
I don't think that's urban splash, but even if it is, I think that pressure should still be on to maintain as much amenity space as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Rice, Alison's made a point in the chat saying, can we think about adding more about the environment, not just about public open spaces, in recognition of climate change, since changes in January 2019? And Chris has got his hand up.
Okay. So, Alison, what you're saying, the environment, you're talking about switching alternatives to cars, yeah? That's basically, is that what you're talking about? Is more public emphasis on public transport? Basically, the points that Dave was making when he was talking about Dudley Road, I think, yeah, we'll put that in, yeah. Climate change, yeah. Okay, and who, did you say Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris.
Hi, just I want to make 2 points. One is about parking on pavements, and the other one is about the plan in general, if I may. Parking on pavements, I did a survey with someone from one of those national street organisations. We walked the area, and you're right, there is lots of pavement parking in Ladywood. But if you take Dudley Road, not Dudley Road, the Gillett Road, I said to the police, there's too many people parking on pavements, and they went round and issued notices to people. But then I felt a bit bad afterwards, because people who are on Gillett Road, they're subject to rat running from, because the Hagley Road can't take all the traffic that comes into Birmingham. So they come down the Gillett Road, and there's often not room. If someone parks on the road for 2 cars to get past, people frequently have their mirrors smashed, which is quite an expensive thing, or worse still, get their cars scraped. So they're taking avoiding action, and it's not helped by people putting the bins outside. So it's a dilemma, true dilemma.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just think we need to have some understanding around the issue.
Yeah.
And the second one is that the plan itself, some time ago, I saw that we could apply to become a pioneer place. And the City Council, and I think Sharon is behind this, set up pioneer places where wards where things are going on could join in with other wards so that they could be replicated across. And I realize there's so much going on in the Summerfield and North Edgbaston area that, and it's not often recognized. There's so many social enterprises and everything. And looking at the plan, I realize it's very thin. We do need to do some kind of survey of all that's going on, all the groups like Eat, Make, Play, Warm Earth, the Junk Food Project, the stuff that's going on in the community meals, everything that's going on around here. And that should be incorporated into the plan. And when I'm on once a month we meet as pioneer places, and I take the part of the North-West Edgbaston Alliance, I often see that we don't really measure up to places like Moseley, have their own community development trust, and they more or less run themselves as the People's Republic of Moseley. And then we have Northfield, again, massive social investment there, lots of things happening and being run by the citizens themselves. So I think we ought to start looking at and have an overall plan that looks at our assets, looks at our anchor institutions in the area, like the hospital, like all the schools and the surgeries, and everyone that has resources that we can bring together. And I think we need to not just leave it up to you as an individual councillor and Sharon to just pick off these individual things. We need to knit them all up together and perhaps have some kind of group that just looks at it and makes the place more of an organic whole than just looking at individual issues.
Yeah. A sort of federation, Chris, is you're talking about?
Yeah, something of that nature.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll put that down. What I'll do is I'll draft some words. I mean, the actual document itself is full of statistics about the ward, taken from the census about the population, housing type, etc., etc. So there's a lot of background information in there. But rather than circulate all that, we thought it was easier just to focus on the priorities that we established 18 months ago. So I'll include that, and I'll get Kay to circulate it so that people can make comments before the next meeting, so that you've so that it isn't just, you know, on the night.
But now, there's a lot going on. So.
Yeah, there is. The problem is things change all the time, and by the time you've created one directory, it's out of date. That's why.
But it's not so much a directory as a looking to the future and a plan where we're going, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Okay, are we likely to have our meeting in face-to-face next time, if it's in September, October? Can you tell me what the thinking is with ward forums, as you attend more than anybody else in the world, I guess?
I can't tell you at the moment, Councillor Rice. We're still waiting for some guidance on how the council's going to proceed with face-to-face meetings. But as soon as I know, I will let you know.
Well, what do people think? you prefer face-to-face so long as it's safe with COVID, or would you like to continue with Zoom? Any views?
Face to face, please.
Okay.
I'm happy with either, so long as people, all people get to have their voices heard.
Yeah.
Well, it may even be that we could have hybrid ones that they can be, if people can't attend, we can still make sure that it's broadcast over Zoom or something like that. But
That might be a bit beyond my capabilities, Councillor Rice.
No, well, I'm sure you'll get technically trained, Dave. Anyway, all right. I think is that it? Is that the end of the agenda? I think so. We've run out of time anyway. Oh, community cleanups. All it was that we had our first one in Gillett, Summerfield, Lincoln, and the park, Summerfield Park. How many fridges do you think we collected in one day? 18. 18 fridges. And that illustrates the impact HMOs, houses in multiple occupation, because most of those will be dumped by landlords rather than by residents. Our next one's going to be around Cawdor Crescent, not Cawdor Crescent, what am I thinking of? Marroway, Coplow, around that part of the ward. Then we're going to do Winson Green, and then, Janet, we're going to do Shenston, Dudley Road and City Road and all round there. So we hope to have one a quarter where we have a real blitz on an area on an ongoing basis. That's what we hope. Okay. Sharon has had real trouble with her Wi-Fi, which is why she isn't here. And I do apologise that you had to have me talking for so long. I hate talking, as you know. She was going to deal with some of the issues, but I've had to deal with them all. Local updates, any other business? Anybody got anything that they wish to impart to colleagues? I can't see any hands. Okay. It is now 8:05. We've had a good 2 hours. Can I thank you for your participation? This is what makes Britain such a great place. Democracy. Everybody has their opinions and they can express them. It's why I love being a public representative. Thank you very much for all your views and your comments. I remain yours sincerely. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank
Night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.